6 strangers wake up and find themselves trapped inside a massive cube-shaped chamber. There are no windows, no food, no water, and no visible way out. All they have are 6 small hatches built into the center of the walls, the ceiling, and the floor. And the most terrifying part is this: you never know whether the next hatch leads to freedom or death. The story begins when a bald man wakes up from unconsciousness. He looks around, completely disoriented. The room feels like a cold metal box. Every wall is covered with dense square patterns, and each hatch seems to be hidden inside those metal panels. The man carefully opens one of them, but behind it is another room exactly like this one, only the color of the light has changed. Then he opens the hatch beneath his feet. Below him is the same structure again: 6 hatches, 6 directions, and 6 unknown ways to die. The man hesitates for a moment. Then he chooses the room that looks the most harmless. He crawls inside, but the second his feet touch the floor, a sharp, metallic sound cuts through the silence. He doesn't even have time to turn around. A razor-thin wire grid shoots out from the wall and slices straight through his body. In the next second, the man falls apart into perfectly cut pieces. This opening tells us 3 things. First, there are no safe rooms here. Second, death gives no warning. And third, never trust any door you see. The scene cuts to another room. A blood-covered hand suddenly reaches out from one of the passages. A black man struggles to crawl inside. His name is Quentin. He's a police officer. Lying in the same room is a quiet man named Worth. Quentin is just about to inspect the room when the hatch on the side suddenly starts turning. He immediately hides behind the door. The moment it opens, he grabs the person inside and yanks them down. But it isn't an enemy. It's a terrified blonde woman. Her name is Holloway, and she's a doctor. Before the 3 of them can figure out what's going on, a cry for help comes from the next room. Quentin opens the hatch. A young woman pokes her head through. Her name is Levin. She's a math student. When she climbs in, one lens of her glasses is already cracked. At first, it seems like a tiny detail, but later, that broken lens will become the key to whether they survive or not. Just as they're still trying to recover, the hatch above them opens. An old man appears from above, staring down at them coldly. He doesn't explain who he is. He doesn't comfort anyone. He just slowly climbs down, takes off one of his shoes, ties the laces, and throws it into the next room. The next second, 2 flamethrowers shoot out from the walls. The shoe is burned to charcoal in an instant. Everyone is too terrified to speak, but the old man says only one thing: there are motion sensors in the walls. In that moment, he instantly becomes their only hope, and Quentin recognizes him too. The old man's name is Ren. His nickname is the Flying Eagle. Legend says he once escaped from 6 maximum security prisons, but Ren corrects him: 7. In a place like this, an escape master showing up feels almost like a miracle. Everyone believes that as long as they follow him, they might actually make it out alive. But this is where the movie gets brutal. It gives you hope first, then crushes it with its own hands. Renz uses the shoe to test the way forward and leads the group through several rooms. But when he reaches a room that looks completely safe, he suddenly stops. He sniffs the air, then says the room is too dry. He thinks there may be a chemical sensor trap inside. A shoe isn't alive, so it won't trigger it. The others are even more impressed. This old man doesn't just know how to escape prisons. He understands traps, sensors, and how this place thinks. But on the very next test, Ren confidently jumps into a room he believes is safe, and in the next second the trap goes off. Acid sprays out. The others desperately pull him back, but by the time they do, his entire face has been burned beyond recognition. This legendary escape artist, the man who broke out of 7 prisons, is dead less than 20 minutes into the movie. And this is the film's first brutal punch. Experience means nothing here. Status means nothing here. Everything you survived before is worthless inside this cube. Once Renz dies, the whole group falls into panic. Quentin may be strong, but he doesn't understand the traps. Holloway may be a doctor, but against traps that kill in seconds, she never even gets a chance to save anyone. Worth looks like he has already given up, sitting in the corner like none of this matters. But Levin, the one who seems the weakest, is the first to notice a real clue. She notices something. Every doorframe has a set of numbers marked on it. And in the rooms that turned out to be trapped, at least one of those numbers was a prime number. But in the safe rooms, there were no primes. So Levin comes up with a rule. If any number on the frame is prime, then the room has a trap. This discovery gives everyone hope again. For the first time, they're no longer stumbling around blindly. Levin handles the calculations. Quentin checks the rooms ahead. Holloway looks after the group, and Worth stays quiet. With Levin's prime number theory, they avoid one trapped room after another. But the more rooms they pass through, the more uneasy they become. Because every room looks almost exactly the same. No day, no night, no direction markers, and nothing to prove they're actually getting closer to the exit. They're still moving through the cube based on a rule Levin has only just figured out, and every step is still a gamble with their lives. Because Levin's conclusion is based only on the few rooms they've seen so far. They've only tested a handful of rooms, so the rule might not cover everything. And in a place like this, one wrong move is enough to kill them. At first, Quentin really does seem like the kind of cop people can trust. Decisive, strong, willing to protect the others. He keeps reminding everyone to think about the people waiting for them outside. He says he has children, so no matter what, he has to make it out alive. But as time passes, food and water start running low. The space feels more and more suffocating, and death feels closer with every room. Quentin begins to change. Or maybe the darker part of him was always there. This place just starts dragging it out of him. Outside the cube, Quentin is a police officer. But inside it, he's the only one with real physical power. And that gives him the most primitive kind of authority. The problem is, power without rules turns into violence fast. Just as the group reaches a dead end, a man suddenly falls through the hatch above. His name is Kazan. He appears to have severe autism. He can't communicate normally. He only keeps repeating one thing.
I want to go back to the blue room.
To Quentin, Kazan is nothing but a burden. He doesn't understand the rules. He can't follow instructions. And he might make a sound at any moment and set off another trap. That makes him dangerous. Quentin wants to leave him behind, but Holloway refuses. She's a doctor, and she cannot accept abandoning a defenseless man to die in this place. For the first time, the conflict between them explodes. In Quentin's eyes, the group has become a survival test. The useful ones get to stay. The useless ones get cut loose. But Holloway refuses to see people that way. To her, danger is not an excuse to abandon basic human decency. The problem is, in a place like this, kindness can become a burden too. Before long, Quentin turns his suspicion toward Worth, the quiet man who has barely joined the discussion since the moment he woke up. He doesn't try to survive. He doesn't offer ideas. He doesn't seem to care what happens next. Quentin is convinced he must know something. So, under violent pressure, Worth finally reveals a shocking secret. He says,
I designed the outer shell.
The moment those words come out, everyone freezes. It turns out, Worth was once hired to design the outer shell of this massive cube. But that was all he worked on, just the shell. He didn't know what kind of traps were inside. He didn't know who gave the orders. And he had no idea this thing would one day be used to imprison people. The whole system was like one enormous project. One person designed the shell. Someone else built the sensors. Someone else handled the wiring. Someone else created the traps. Everyone only worked on one tiny piece of it. And no one knew that once all those pieces came together, they would become a monster built to swallow people alive. Worth's confession crushes everyone. But it also gives them a new clue. If he designed the outer shell, then he must know how big this cube really is. Worth says the entire shell is 434 feet on each side. Levin immediately starts calculating. By pacing out the room, she estimates that each chamber is about 14 feet wide, and 434 divided by 14 comes out to about 26, which means this giant cube may be made up of 26 rooms in every direction, 26 by 26 by 26, a total of 17,576 rooms. After hearing that, everyone nearly breaks down. They thought they were just looking for an exit, but in reality, they've been thrown into a giant hive made of more than 10,000 rooms. Then Levin suddenly realizes something. The numbers on the door frames aren't just warnings about traps. They may actually be coordinates. 3 sets of numbers, one for the x-axis, one for the y-axis, and one for the z-axis. If they can decode them, they can figure out exactly where they are inside the cube. For the first time in a while, hope comes back. They may only be a few rooms away from the outer edge, and if they can reach the edge, they might find the exit. But soon, they run into a new kind of trap, a sound-activated room. The slightest noise will trigger the kill mechanism. For a normal person, getting through in total silence would already be hard. But for someone like Kazan, who could panic or make a sound at any moment, it's almost impossible. Quentin once again says they should leave Kazan behind. And once again, Holloway refuses. In the end, they still bring Kazan into the sound-activated room. Everyone holds their breath and inches their way through it. But just as they're about to make it through, Kazan's pant leg gets caught on the hatch handle. The handle starts to turn. The trap is about to go off. Quentin rushes toward the exit with everything he has, and barely makes it out, almost brushing against death itself. After barely escaping death, Quentin completely loses control. He grabs Kazan and screams that he needs to be taught a lesson. Holloway rushes in to stop him, and the two of them explode into a furious argument. Holloway calls him inhuman, but Quentin believes Kazan is going to get them all killed sooner or later. At this point, Quentin is no longer the cop who is trying to protect everyone. He starts to believe that if survival is on the line, the weak can be sacrificed. And this is where he truly begins to turn into a monster. But even with trust completely falling apart, they still don't dare stop. Because in this place, stopping means waiting to die. Levin can only keep reading the numbers. Holloway stays close to Kazan, protecting him with everything she has. Worth is forced to move ahead and test the way forward, and Quentin hangs over everyone like a bomb ready to explode. So they keep moving in the direction Levin calculated. And finally they reach the edge of the cube. But when they open the hatch, there is no exit outside, only bottomless darkness. Between the cube's inner structure and the outer shell, there is a huge dark void. Quentin can't accept that this is a dead end. He suggests tying their clothes together into a makeshift rope. Then one of them can swing across the gap and see what's on the other side. At first, he wants to go himself, but he's too heavy. A rope made from clothes would never hold his weight. That's when Levin says she can do it. She's the lightest one in the group, but Holloway shuts that down immediately. Levin is the only person who can read the numbers. If anything happens to her, none of them will ever find the way out. So Holloway volunteers to go instead. The group ties their clothes together into a long rope. Then, little by little, they lower her out of the room. Holloway hangs above the dark void. There is no floor beneath her feet, and in front of her, there is no visible end. She tries to swing across to the other side, but right then, the entire cube suddenly shakes violently. The others lose their grip, and Holloway drops. Quentin reacts fast and catches her hand. For 1 second, she thinks she's been saved. But when she looks up at Quentin, she doesn't see someone desperate to save her. She sees him judging her, coldly, silently, like he's deciding whether she's still worth saving. The next second, Quentin lets go. When the others pull the rope back in, Quentin says only one thing. She slipped. No one says a word. But everyone knows it wasn't an accident. It was murder. From that moment on, Quentin is no longer the leader of the group. He becomes the dictator inside this prison. Later, the group stops to rest, completely exhausted. Levin is on the edge of breaking down. Her gift for math couldn't save Holloway, and it can't save this team as it keeps falling apart. While the others are passed out from exhaustion, Quentin quietly clamps a hand over Levin's mouth and drags her into another room. He wants to ditch Worth and Kazan and escape with only Levin. Because Levin is useful, but in his eyes, Kazan and Worth are nothing but dead weight. Even Levin is no longer a teammate to him. She's just a tool to help him survive. Luckily, Worth arrives just in time and saves her. But he's no match for Quentin. Quentin beats him until his face is covered in blood. Then he uses Worth like a test subject. A human lab rat to check the next room. He throws him straight through the hatch. But after Worth falls in, he starts laughing. The others rush over to look, and everyone freezes, because lying inside that room is Renz's body. Which means, after everything they've been through, they somehow ended up right back where they started. All their effort suddenly feels like a joke. The prime number theory, the coordinate calculations, testing rooms with a shoe, all of it feels like a meaningless struggle. But just as everyone is falling apart, Worth notices something strange. When Renz died, this room should have been surrounded by other rooms. But now, one side of it is close to the outer shell. That means they weren't walking in circles. The rooms themselves have been moving. This cube isn't a fixed maze at all. It's a giant puzzle that keeps rearranging itself. All those deep rumbles and violent shakes they heard were the sounds of rooms shifting into new positions. Only then does Levin realize her earlier theory was incomplete. At first, she thought that if any number contained a prime, the room had a trap. But the real rule is far more complicated than she imagined. The numbers have to be broken down further before they can know whether a room is actually safe. But the numbers on the door frames are too large. Without a computer, there's no way a normal person could calculate them in their head. Levin completely loses hope. She says no one in the world could do this kind of math mentally. But right then, Kazan, the man everyone saw as a burden, suddenly speaks. 2. Levin freezes. Then she gives him a few more complicated numbers to test him. And somehow, Kazan answers almost instantly. Only then do they realize Kazan isn't just the helpless burden they thought he was. He has savant syndrome. His brain has an extraordinary instinct for numbers. The massive calculations Levin can't do in her head may be as easy for Kazan as counting on his fingers. And the most ironic part is this. The person they wanted to abandon at first has now become their only hope. With Kazan, escape finally seems possible. Levin reads the numbers. Kazan does the calculations. Worth is forced to move ahead and test the rooms. And Quentin is still following the group. But he's no longer the man who once tried to protect them. Now he's just watching from behind, waiting for the right moment to make his move. As they continue searching for a way out, Levin feels something under her foot. She looks down and picks it up. It's the broken lens from when she first came in. Which means the room they're standing in now is actually the same room where they first woke up. And only now does Levin finally understand how the exit really works. This isn't just an ordinary room. At a certain point, it moves into position right in front of the outer exit. As long as they stay in this room and wait for it to line up with the exit, they'll have a chance to get out. What makes it even more ironic is this. The harder they fought to move from room to room, the more chances they may have missed to actually escape. But by the time they understand this, it's already too late, because Quentin has completely lost it. He won't let anyone slip out of his control. And he definitely won't let the people who've seen what he really is make it out alive. With escape finally right in front of them, Quentin starts forcing Levin and Kazan to follow his orders. But the moment he gets distracted, Worth quickly shuts the hatch and traps him in the next room. For the moment, they finally shake him off. But Levin knows they can't keep running blindly anymore, because this is the only room that will line up with the exit, so the three of them can only stay here and wait for it to move into the right position. Then the familiar rumbling sound starts again. The entire room begins to move. When the shaking finally stops, Kazan crawls to the hatch and slowly turns the handle. The next second, a blinding white light pours in. For the first time, they see something that actually looks like an exit. Levin is almost in tears. After all the death, the fear, and the betrayal, she can finally see freedom. But right then, Worth stops. He sits down on the floor, and strangely, his face looks calm. Levin asks him why he isn't leaving. Worth says he's tired of the outside world. What's out there? He answers with a bitter smile. Boundless human stupidity. To Worth, the cube is terrifying. But the world outside may be just another prison, only bigger. He helped build this system, and in the end, the system swallowed him too. Now the exit is right in front of him, but suddenly, he no longer wants to leave. Just as Levin is desperately trying to convince Worth to go, the next second, a sharp metal handle suddenly pierces Levin from behind. Quentin has caught up to them. He's covered in blood, like a demon crawling out of hell. The girl whose mind carried everyone all the way here never makes it through the final door. She dies one step away from freedom. Worth screams for Kazan to run. Quentin lunges at Worth, then tries to crawl toward the exit himself. But just as half his body is about to make it through, the badly wounded Worth uses the last of his strength to grab Quentin's foot. At the same time, the room begins to move again. The walls shift out of alignment. Quentin lets out one final scream, and when it's over, all that remains on the wall is a blood-red smear. The man who tried to control everything with violence is finally killed by the very rules he tried so hard to control. In the end, a dying Worth collapses beside Levin, and the only one left is Kazan. He slowly walks toward the white light. The movie never tells us what's waiting outside that light. Is it freedom, or the entrance to another cube? No one knows. But the most ironic part of this ending is that the only survivor isn't the strongest cop, it isn't the legendary escape artist, and it isn't the brilliant math student. It's the one person everyone saw as a burden from the very beginning. The real horror of Cube was never just the razor-thin wires, the acid, the fire, or the traps. It's that the film throws ordinary people into a system with no clear rules, then watches as their true nature slowly comes out. Some people use power to protect others, some use power to control them, some hold on to kindness even in absolute despair. Others turn into monsters the moment fear takes over. This cube is like a cold, silent laboratory. It never explains where it came from. It never tells you who built it. It simply keeps running, filtering, swallowing, waiting for the next person to wake up. And the scariest part is, you never know whether the next door you open will lead to survival or a trap.